Bitcoin plunging as we speak. I've talked about this very important level that we're at right now, which is basically the weekly 50 SMA. I did not expect that alone to hold the price action because Bitcoin has been down at this moving average for the third time on this trend. And when you keep hitting the same support on the same trend, it gets weaker. So that's why I'm saying probability is that Bitcoin is not going to get it's not going to get support from the weekly 50 SMA alone, right? That's currently at about 103k and we're a little bit away from that right now. However, I'm looking at this range here where there was a lot of consolidation between about December of last year and even February of this year, right? These weekly candle consolidations that could range from about 92,000 to about 110,000. So we're in that range. Now, that 92,000 level is kind of in line with this head and shoulders breakdown, which I've talked about last week. Okay. That breakdown target is about 95,000. So that is what I'm looking at right now for the next support area. Okay. Which looks like we're kind of heading there right now. Okay. Now, why am I talking about Bitcoin? Because Bitcoin is still the driver of this crypto market. If Bitcoin dumps, that will tank a lot of these altcoins, as you guys are seeing right now on these altcoins. We're seeing a sea of red. There are a few exceptions. If I was holding any altcoins, I am holding altcoins. I am long on quite a bit of the altcoins here. However, if I'm looking at profitable positions, especially because I am in leverage positions, I will be very inclined to take profits, probably more so than if you were in a in a full on bull market. I still think we're in a bull market. We are experiencing quite a bit of consolidation, but I don't think this bull market is over. That is just my opinion, not financial advice, like the entirety of this video. So you guys got to form your own opinions and strategies. All right, we're also going to be taking a look into a few altcoin setups later in this video. Despite this downwards price action we're seeing, this downtrend that we're seeing, and we need to see Bitcoin break out of it. So first of all, 95,000 in that range, okay? And then if that range does not hold, we can go a lot deeper. Do I think we're gonna get there? In a wick, in a very bad wick. I think less likely, right? I think we're probably gonna drag on and slowly get there, which is gonna be a slow death before a bounce. But that's what I think right now. Okay. All right, so we're also going to be taking a look into Kava. We're going to be taking a look into Zora. We're also going to be taking a look into Flare Network, see what's happening in some of these coins, what they currently look like. Have their setups or trading patterns been invalidated by this recent downwards price action from Bitcoin? So later in this video, we're going to be taking a look into that. We're also going to be taking a look into some major macro news as well as crypto news. I'll give you guys my instant reaction to some headlines. First of all, we're going to go ahead and dive a little deeper into the time frames here. This is the daily time frame. Okay? Daily time frame, we still have some bullish signals here, but I'll be very careful right now. Okay? There's still bullish signals here, one of which is that it is still running within a falling wedge pattern. Okay, falling wedges still have a higher chance of breaking to the upside. They are bullish patterns. If this one breaks to the upside by this point, for example, price target will still be about 128,000. Now, falling wedges, even though they have a higher chance of breaking to the upside, still have to mind the downside risk. If we actually break down, then we are looking at, well, very close to that 95,000 area. Okay. Now, there is still very possible bullish divergence on the RSI here, depending on how the daily candle closes. But if we actually take a look into the RSI that the bears actually need to beat in order to avoid a bearish divergence scenario, it's going to be about a 32 on the daily RSI, which is still pretty hard for the bears to beat, so there could still be another bounce somewhere in here. I'm looking for a possible hedge for my long positions by shorting Bitcoin as well. I'm looking at a level of about probably, I'm going to be tracking this upper trend line here of this smaller falling wedge pattern on the hourly time frame. Okay, potentially. Okay, I'm looking for some lower time frame confirmation, because if we actually break back out of this falling wedge pattern, I think this falling wedge pattern is probably validated on a higher time frame. For probably the 3 hour. Is it the 3 hour? 3 hour time frame is the highest time frame it's actually validated in. So I actually think never mind that. I'm gonna scratch that real quick. So I'm gonna go back to the drawing boards about a possible hedging opportunity, but I am looking to hedge against my long positions with a short Bitcoin position. It's gonna be a small short with a short stop. The reasoning is because I'm looking for key resistance levels where Bitcoin gets rejected before possibly continuing lower. In that case, if Bitcoin does not break above that key resistance level, then I would still get paid, right? However, if Bitcoin does break above that key resistance level, it liquidates my short, and the increase in value of my long positions will overcompensate for that short position getting liquidated. So I am still looking for some opportunities like that to survive this consolidation right here. All right, so let's go ahead and go to some major news headlines. Next one, this one is by NewsBTC. Bitcoin eyes new all-time highs as analysts set 170,000 targets. Well, it's still good to see echoes of bullish opinions, because it's very hard to be bullish on this market right now. But hey, I'm still here. I'm still here since I've been doing this for 5+ years, but over the past year and a half or so, since April of last year, it has not been a smooth ride for crypto, right? But I'll still be here, updating you guys on what the market does, and if I change my opinion at any point. But I have not for the past couple of months, even a year and a half. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and let's see if there's anything noteworthy in this news here. Okay. U.S. listed spot Bitcoin ETF posted a $520 million inflow on Tuesday, a sharp change after a 1.15 million inflow the day before in a recent week that saw $1.22 billion in withdrawals. Well, we're seeing some inflows in the ETFs here, but it's not really reflecting it in the price right now. All right, let's go ahead and go to the next piece. Next piece is by Crypto News. Bitcoin tests critical support as bearish momentum deepens, and long-term holders unload 815K Bitcoin crypto quant. So, long-term holders are unloading, okay? At least according to this news piece here. Critical support is going to be anywhere from about 92 to where we are at right now, like I pointed out to you guys, based on that weekly candle consolidation area, okay? If not, then we're looking at the monthly 21 SMA, which is not that far behind. It's going to be about 87,000. That is going to be a fresh moving average we have not hit during this trend. Next one is by Cointelegraph. What happens if the Fed rate cuts rates before Christmas Eve? Now, I've been tracking the CME Watch tool with you guys, and this has been very accurate, even though the probability does change as new data and events unfold. Now, we're actually looking at only almost a 50-50 now for the Fed rate cuts for the FOMC meeting, for a possible rate cut during that meeting on December 10th. So it's not looking good at the moment. This is one of my key arguments for why this bull cycle is not over yet, because the Fed has just started cutting rates back in September, even though the December meeting right now is looking iffy. Gonna be following this with you guys as well as we get closer to the Fed meetings. All right, let's go ahead and go to let's take a look into some key takeaways here that is mentioned by this analyst. So the Fed's December 9th to 10th meeting carries unusual weight as market awaits to see whether another cut will arrive before Christmas. Shaping bonds, equities, and crypto after 2 cuts in 2025, rates now sit at 3.75 to 4%. Labor weakness and softer inflation supports further easing, but officials remain divided because inflation risks have not fully cleared. I mean, inflation is. I don't think that is something that they're going to be taking care of, anyways. So, I mean, I think what we're looking for is probably weaker job data, and maybe, yeah. I mean, it's going to be weaker job data, as well as at least inflation data that's not over the top. Okay, so some reports to be looking out for, but I'm not going to be mentioning that over this video because that's going to take more details. Next piece is by The Block. JP Morgan sees Bitcoin support at $94,000. That's pretty in line with the range I pointed out to you guys. Keeps $170,000 upside case intact. Now, I don't usually agree with a lot of these major projections, right, by some of these major companies, including JP Morgan. But this one actually sounds like it makes sense, okay? Actually sounds like it resonates a lot with what I'm seeing here on the charts, okay? So let's go ahead and dive a little bit deeper into this. Bitcoin's downside from current levels appear to be very limited, according to JP Morgan analysts, who sees the support price at around $94,000. Okay. Let's see what the possibility. Let's see why is he projecting 170K. At the same time, the analyst reiterated last week's 6 to 12 month upside projection of about $170,000. So that's going to be a 6 to 12 month time period where we're looking at a possibility of 170,000. It's going to take some time to get there. Potentially a little bit more pain before getting there. All right, let's come over here to altcoin setups. First of all, we're going to take a look into Kava and see what's happening with Kava here. It is actually one of the few coins up today. All right, weekly time frame. I want to mention that I have invalidated some of these charts that I'm going to be talking about because they have either been invalidated or I'm changing my opinion based on what I'm seeing here on the charts, okay? Now, this is the weekly time frame. Kava still running within this falling wedge pattern. Falling wedges are bullish patterns, but when you're running within the falling wedge pattern itself, depending on where you bought in, right, it could still be very hard to watch because it is a downtrend until you break out of it. Falling wedges do have a higher chance of breaking to the upside. And if this falling wedge pattern breaks to the upside here, let me take a measure move again, which is basically you measure the opening of the pattern. And then you put that on top of an estimated breakout point. Let's just say if we break out by this point, for example, Kava will have a price target of $1.20, over $1.20. Now, from within the falling wedge pattern, the bigger falling wedge pattern, there is a smaller falling wedge pattern, okay? Now, within the smaller falling wedge pattern here, if it breaks out by this point, for example, price target would be about 62, almost, or let's just say above 60 cents by this point, for example. Quite a bit of your weekly moving averages above your price action right now, including your weekly 21, your weekly 50 SMA, very close. Let's take a look into smaller time frame. Smaller time frame, you can see there is quite a bit of bullish divergence playing out right now, as there has been lower or equal lows on the price action chart, but you see equal or higher lows on the RSI. Very, very important indicator on the RSI. That usually tells you there's going to be a bounce coming. Okay, now the magnitude of the bounce is I think in my opinion it's going to depend a lot on how much divergence you're seeing, right? Maybe for the first divergence you're not going to get that much of a bounce as if you would if you continue building these divergences. So that's basically what I'm looking at for Kava. I don't see a particular pattern that's happening on the smaller time frame. Let's go ahead and go to Zora and see what's happening with Zora. Weekly time frame here, I talked about this potential scenario here if Zora doesn't break above this upper trend line, okay? Because if Zora does not break above this upper trend line here, then you could be looking at more downside to form a falling wedge pattern. Now, something else I don't really like about this chart is that there is bearish divergence, right? Two bearish divergence here. You see a higher high, a slightly higher high on the price action chart, but an equal high here on the RSI. That's bearish divergence, okay? And right now it's trying to get back on top of the weekly 21 SMA at about 6.5 cents. If that is not successful, you could be looking at further downside. Let's take a look into a smaller time frame here, which is the daily time frame. It broke out of this falling wedge pattern here, and after it broke out, it did came down for more downside, which is not uncommon to see out of a breakout of a falling wedge pattern, just because of the amount of resistance that's above the price action. Now, the price target for this pattern here is going to be roughly about almost 9 cents, okay? Let's see if Zora gets there, because it did get rejected at the daily 21 and daily 50, okay? If this price action breaks back into this pattern here with the candle close, I think the highest time frame for this pattern is the daily time frame. Let me check again. Potentially the 3-day, okay? Potentially the 3-day. Then if you see a 3-day candle close back into this pattern, that's going to invalidate the breakout, okay? The next level of key support would be about 4.9 cents, the daily 200 SMA. Let's go ahead and go to Flare Network, see what's happening with Flare Network. Weekly time frame. I mentioned there was a falling wedge breakout, still valid. Double bottom pattern, still valid, because the price action is still above some of these key support levels of those patterns. And what's happening with Flare Network right now? Let's take a look into the daily time frame here, where there's a falling wedge pattern breakout. Okay, price target is going to be about 2.3 cents about. Now, these price targets are estimates only. There could be more, there could be less, a lot of which for these altcoins do depend on what happens with Bitcoin. If Bitcoin starts dumping from here, these altcoin setups, they're not going to matter very much. So that's why I always talk about Bitcoin first. Now, Flare Network broke out of this falling wedge pattern here. Did get rejected at the daily 21 SMA, right? Let's see if it can actually hold above the upper trend line here. However, if it doesn't, then that invalidates the breakouts. The daily time frame is the highest time frame I'm looking at where the pattern is validated in. So if you get a daily candle close back within this pattern here, that is going to invalidate the breakouts. And let's take a look into a higher time frame. So we can update on Flare Network next time, because that's, it's still kind of far from some of the supports here at about 1.25 cents that I will talk about. At least on the weekly time frame here. So let's see if Flare Network can actually hold above that breakout on the smaller falling wedge pattern here. I can come back to update you guys if enough of you guys want to continue seeing any more of Flare Network, Kava, or Zora, or any other coins in this market by dropping a like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys on the next one.